Have you ever experienced anxiety speaking in public, feeling some nervousness or just freaking out? So what to do about that? Well, today here with me we have Matt Abrahams and he will talk about speaking up without freaking out. Matt is the lecturer on organizational behavior at Stanford Graduate School of Business, and he is also award-winning author and TEDx speaker who taught not just regular speakers but also Nobel Prize winners. He has his own book, his podcast, and so much more. He's probably one of the best person in the world to teach you on communication techniques. So I'm super excited to have you, Matt, with us today, and let's talk on the topic. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. And that introduction is way too long. I am very excited to be here with all of you. Thank you very much. Today is all about sharing tips and tricks for how to be more comfortable and confident in your communication. In other words, what I like to call speaking up without freaking out. So today I intend to walk you through some content around confidence building and to give you some best practices for how to be more comfortable in your communication. And I look forward to taking your questions about anything related to communication to help you feel better at the end of all of this. So let's go ahead and get started. When it comes to communication, written or spoken, confidence is key. We need to be confident in our communication. And it's a very simple equation. Confidence equals competence. The more confident you appear, the more competent and credible your audience will see you as. Now, of course, you can take this to an extreme. Being overconfident, being arrogant works against you. But there's a sweet spot of where you're being confident really helps you in terms of your competence and credibility. Now, the problem is there is a huge enemy to confidence, and that is anxiety. Most people report being very nervous in high stakes, important communication. If you're pitching a business, if you're advocating for something you're passionate about, if you're sharing information that's personal, these are high stakes situations that can make many people very nervous. So it is normal to be nervous. And quite frankly, I think the 15% of people who report being nervous are lying. I think we could create a situation that would make them nervous too. So today is all about how can we go about managing our anxiety. And I use that word manage very carefully. I don't think anxiety is something that we can ever truly overcome. I think it's something that we will have with us. And in fact, I think it is something that is good for us. Being nervous helps us. It helps us focus. It gives us energy. It tells us what we're doing is important. However, we want to manage it so it doesn't manage us. So I'd like to spend the majority of my time today talking about techniques for managing anxiety. And when it comes to managing anxiety, we have to take a two-pronged approach. We have to approach it in two ways. We have to focus both on symptoms as well as sources of anxiety. Symptoms are what we physically experience, what we mentally experience. Sources are the things that initiate and exacerbate our anxiety. It's what makes it worse. So today I'm going to take time to talk about both symptoms and sources of anxiety. So let's start with symptoms. In the chat, I would like for all of you to type in what happens for you physically or mentally when you feel anxious about some communication you have. I'll start. I turn red and I sweat. I perspire. Go ahead in the chat and type in what happens for you when you get nervous. Let's see. Aha, I stutter, sweaty palms. Yeah, isn't it interesting? I call it plumbing reversal. What's normally wet gets dry and what's normally dry gets wet. So you get dry mouth, but sweaty palms. Very weird. I mess up my words. My heart starts beating faster. My voice goes up. Somebody says my voice goes down. Your voice changes. Sometimes we speak really fast. Sometimes people touch their head or play with their hair or play with rings and jewelry. talking too fast, intensified accent. That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Voice vibrates and shakes. Yes, these are all normal and natural responses to anxiety. In fact, believe it or not, these are normal and natural responses to being excited, to being agitated. Your body has one response to arousal, positive or negative. If I came to any of you and say, hey, guess what? You just won $1 million free. Your heart rate would go up, you'd breathe short, you might touch your face, your hands would get sweaty. All of those same things play out. Yet when we get nervous, we label those as bad or negative. So we'll get back to this in a little bit, but it's how you approach it can actually affect how you feel about it. But let's deal with some of these symptoms directly. What you are experiencing is the fight or flight response. Your body is trying to protect you. When you speak in a high-stakes situation, your body sees it as a threat. Just like for those of us who are scared of heights or scared of going fast or scared of spiders or snakes or weapons, our body sees speaking as a threat. And I am happy offline to talk about why that's the case. It's a very academic argument, but let's just take that it is something that invokes the fight or flight response. So there are things we can do to reduce that anxiety. Let me walk you through 4 or 5 very practical things you can do to reduce some of these symptoms. First and foremost, take a deep breath. Deep breathing, the kind you would take if you've ever done Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga. Deep belly breath can slow down your autonomic nervous system. That's the part of you that's getting really, really anxious. So by taking some deep breaths in a very particular way, you can actually reduce that. When we take a deep breath, we want to take it through our nose, and we want our exhale to be longer than our inhale. All of the magic of breathing to relax happens on the exhalation, not the inhalation. So the rule of thumb, or shall I say the rule of lung, is that you want your exhale to be twice as long as your inhale. So if you take a 3 count in, take a 6 count out. And it only takes 2 or 3 of these breaths to see the benefit. So before you log into the Zoom or before you walk onto the stage or enter into the meeting room, take a few deep belly breaths. It will change how you feel. It will also change some of these issues with voice that many of you have said. When we invoke the fight or flight response, our body is trying to oxygenate itself. We're trying to get more oxygen to our body through our blood. So that's why your heart starts pounding faster, because it's trying to get more blood circulating, and you need to get more oxygen into that blood. So you breathe shallow and you breathe more rapidly. Taking those slow, deep breaths will slow you down, because when you breathe fast, your voice changes. First, the faster you breathe, the faster you talk. So deep breaths will slow your speaking rate. It will also change how your voice sounds. When I breathe very quickly, my voice sounds like this. It sounds very stilted, and you can hear how it's higher in register. When I take that deep breath, it doesn't shake, it is slower, and it sounds more conversational. So one way to slow your heart rate and to slow your speaking is through that deep breathing. Now, some people get shaky when they get nervous. This is the adrenaline going through your body. And adrenaline's sole purpose is to move you. It is to move you away from the threat and towards safety. That's why we get an adrenaline rush. Unfortunately, while speaking in front of people or virtually, a lot of movement is not a good thing. It's very distracting. So we have to move in a very precise way to fulfill the obligation that adrenaline is giving us. So if you are physically in a room with people and you're standing, when you begin, step forward. By stepping in, you take that adrenaline and use it for movement. If I'm virtual, I can lean in. Or better yet, in person or on Zoom, gesture broadly. When I gesture, it is a movement and it can reduce that adrenaline rush and it will reduce the shakiness. Gesture broadly. By the way, when you gesture slowly and it will also slow your speaking rate down. Any of you who are fast talkers know that you gesture fast as well. We sync up our gesture rate and our speaking rate. So take the time to gesture more slowly and it will slow you down and it will stop you from shaking. If you are like me and you blush, you turn red and you perspire, that is because your blood pressure is going up. Your heart is beating faster, your body tenses up, so you're pushing more blood through tighter tubes. This causes you to get hot. And that's why you perspire and blush. It's like you're exercising. Many of us sweat when we exercise. Same thing is going on. Heart rate's going up, body is tensing. So what we need to do literally is cool ourselves down. If you can lower your body temperature, you won't turn red and you won't perspire as much. So how do you do that? Well, before you speak, hold something cold in the palms of your hand. The palms of your hand, just like your forehead and the back of your neck, are thermoregulators for your body. By that, I mean they control your temperature. If you've ever had a fever and you've put a cold compress on your forehead to cool yourself down, we're just doing the same thing by holding something cold in our hands. In fact, many of you just today have done this in reverse. If on a cold morning you have ever held warm coffee or tea and felt that it's warmed you up, that's exactly what we're talking about. So you can stop the sweating, you can stop the turning red simply by doing this. So there are some things you can do to manage the symptoms of anxiety that you have. That can be really helpful, but that's not enough. We also have to think about the sources of anxiety. Sources are things that initiate our anxiety, or they are the things that make it worse. So I want to introduce you to a couple things we can do to help reduce sources of anxiety. And by the way, when I am done, I am going to share with you lots of resources for you to learn some of the additional information. I hear some noise in the background. Can you please make sure that your microphones are off?
Yes, we'll
so when it comes to sources of anxiety, I want to share a few of them with you. The first has to, and this is a strange one, so listen carefully. The first source of anxiety comes from our anxiety. What did he just say? Doesn't that sound silly? Well, let me explain it to you. Imagine you're in a meeting, virtual or in person. You're the fourth person on the agenda. You come into the meeting, the first person starts talking, they're doing a great job, people are involved, and you're starting to think, oh, I'm coming up. I'm not going to be as good as this person. Second person goes, they do a great job, and you're thinking, oh, I should have prepared more. I can't believe how great these people are doing. The third person, the person right in front of you, starts and they're doing really well. Now you're really like, oh my goodness, why was I binge watching that show last night? I should have been practicing. Why is it me? Why isn't it somebody else presenting? So do you see how your anxiety, as it begins to build, all of a sudden starts feeding on itself and it makes it even worse? And the thing that gets in the way is we try to stop that. We say, oh, I shouldn't be nervous. I can't be nervous. This is bad. I shouldn't be. And all we're doing is actually making ourselves more nervous. So we need to short circuit that. So for our anxiety that comes from our starting to get nervous, what we need to do is we need to take techniques from mindfulness. And I hope all of you have heard of mindfulness and practice mindfulness. Mindfulness teaches us that when you have an emotion, positive or negative, you greet it. You don't try to run from it. You don't try to put it down. You just accept it. So when you feel nervous about speaking, what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you, and you start feeling this anxiety, just say, this is me feeling nervous. It makes sense that I'm nervous. Anybody in this circumstance would feel nervous. And by greeting it, rather than trying to run from it or think badly of yourself for being nervous, by accepting it, you reduce the pressure. You buy yourself time. In the academic world, we say that it gives you a sense of agency, a sense of control. So the first source of anxiety is your anxiety and how it can spiral. So we greet the anxiety. We use mindfulness. I want you all to go to the reactions button. And I'd like for you to click the thumbs up if one of these things is true for you. Have you ever done any singing, dancing, acting, or played a sport? Have you done any of those? Give me a thumbs up if you've done any of those. There should be lots and lots of thumbs up here on these. Yes, look at that. I'm sure most of you have played some sport in your life. Excellent. The next time you do one of these, Daniil, I think you need to do a talent show or do some kind of sporting event, because look at everybody. They've all done some of this.
I love it. Yeah, we will do it.
Here's the problem. In each of those activities, playing a sport, singing, dancing, acting, there is a right way to do it. If you're an actor, you're supposed to say your line in the right way, in the right place at the right time. And if you don't, you've made a mistake. The same thing is true if you're an athlete. There's a right way to play your sport and a wrong way. There are referees to keep you playing it right. In some sports, they actually keep track of how many mistakes you make. The problem is we take that mindset, that mentality into our communication. We think that we have to do it right. And that puts a lot of pressure on us, the pressure to do it right. I am here to tell you, as somebody who for decades has been studying and working on communication, there is no right way to communicate. There are better ways and worse ways, but there is no one right way. So putting this pressure on ourselves to perform right is not helping. It's only making it worse. In fact, we do a lot of things that make our anxiety worse. For example, we try to memorize. Memorizing is a fake promise. It is a false hope. By memorizing, we think, oh, I'll know my stuff, so I won't forget and I'll do well. The problem is when you memorize, it puts an incredible cognitive burden on you. And what that means is that your brain is trying to figure out, am I saying it right according to the manuscript or to the thing I've memorized? So only part of your attention is focused on what you're saying and connecting with your audience, and the other part is judging and evaluating. So you have less resource to actually present well. So while you think it's helping you, it's actually hurting you. Now the question becomes, what do I do if I can't memorize? Instead of memorizing, I would like for you to structure your content. Create a map for your content. I am a huge fan of structure. There are lots of structures you can use. A structure is nothing more than a logical connection of ideas. So how do you create a structure? There are many of them. There's one many of you who pitch or try to persuade people use. Maybe you don't know you're using it, but it's called problem, solution, benefit. You tell people the problem that you're trying to solve, you explain how you solve it, and then you explain the benefits of doing so. That's a structure. There might be past, present, future. Here's how things used to be. Here's how they are. Here's how they're likely to be in the future. That's a structure. By having that structure, having that map, you don't need to know specifically every single word to say. You simply need to know the structure. I like to say if you have a map, it's hard to get lost. Having a structure will help you get through your content without memorizing. So one source of anxiety is our anxiety, and we use mindfulness to help. Another source of anxiety is the pressure we put on ourselves to get it right. So we have to change our mindset and not try to get it right. And we use structure rather than script to get through it. The final source of anxiety that I'd like to mention is the fact that many of us are nervous about not accomplishing our goal. We are afraid we will fail in our goal. I won't get the support. I won't get the funding. I won't get the grade. That is, by definition, a fear of a future outcome. What makes us nervous is a potential negative future outcome. So how do we short circuit that? We become present oriented. By being in the moment, by definition, you're not in the future worried about it. So how do we get present oriented? Lots of different ways to do that. One way to do it is to do something physical. When you do something physical, you're in your body, not in your head. So walk around the building, do some jumping jacks before you start. Get physical. Talk to people in the room or on the Zoom before you start. That's a way of connecting. Do what athletes do. Athletes listen to songs or playlists before they do their sport. That gets you in the present moment. Start at 100 and count backwards by 17s. I'll pause. That's hard. The first one's easy, 83, and then you got to do all the rest. Simply by doing that, you get yourself in the present moment. So here's the bottom line in all of this. Anxiety is normal and natural in communication. It is part of being human. But there are things we can do to manage it. We can manage symptoms, deep breathing, slow gestures, stepping in, holding something cold. There are things we can do to stop it from starting or to reduce it from getting worse. We be mindful and greet the anxiety. We get ourselves present oriented. We use outlines and structure instead of memorizing. By doing these things, you can be more confident in your communication. Now, I want to share with you several resources that exist that you can leverage. The first is a website I curate called nofreakingspeaking.com. It has a bunch of resources that I have created as well as other people. I've written a book, Speaking Up Without Freaking Out. It is all about confident communication. You can buy this book on Amazon and other places. If you are a nervous speaker or somebody who wants to be more comfortable and confident, you might check it out. One of my greatest pleasures in the world is that I host a podcast called Think Fast, Talk Smart. I host it for Stanford's Business School. We release episodes every other week. It's available on any player that you have, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, you name it. And all we do is talk about communication for 20 minutes. We just released an episode yesterday that talks about communication in personal life decisions, like, should I apply for this job? Should I get married? So lots of good advice there. I encourage all of you to connect with me or with Think Fast, Talk Smart. I am a huge supporter of LinkedIn, and before we're done in the chat, I'll put in my LinkedIn handle. But you can see on the screen ways to connect on LinkedIn to Think Fast, Talk Smart, on Instagram, and on Twitter. It has been a true pleasure to share this information with you. I hope that it has been helpful to you to learn to think about how to be more confident in your communication. And I will now start to take your questions. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was fantastic. I really appreciate that, and it's so inspiring. Everyone, please raise your hands, or if you want to ask questions, or type your questions here in the chat. We will ask a few questions to Matt before we let him go. And my first question, Matt, to you. So what would you recommend to do with your body language? Because when you talk, people always use body language either naturally or unnaturally. And so you want to support your speaking with your right body language. So what would be your recommendations on that?
Thank you for your question. So how you position your body really does matter, virtually or in person. And you want to focus on that. And it's really important to think about it. So let me give you some principles. There is no right or wrong here. There's just better or worse. The first principle that I would like to share is you want to keep your body big. And by big, what I mean is you want to take up space. Many people make themselves small or lean or in awkward positions. So everybody now, I can only see a few of you because you're showing your cameras. Not all of you are. I'd like for you to take your shoulder blades in your back, and I just want you to pull them down. You see how that makes me broader? I'm not puffing my chest out. My elbows aren't going back. I'm just pulling my shoulder blades down. By pulling your shoulder blades down, it keeps your head straight and you fill up more space. So if you're virtual in the box, you want to do this. If you're standing in front of people, you want to do this. So the first rule is that you want to be big, balanced, and still. Big, balanced, and still. So this is how we make ourselves big, by pulling our shoulder blades down. Balanced, we want to keep our head straight. That makes a big difference. And we want to be still. We don't want to be shaking and moving around. It can be really challenging if you're moving a lot. So posturally, that's what you want to do. Second, eye contact is important. In most cultures, you should look at the people you're speaking to. If you're in person, you look around the room, you look at the audience. If you're virtual, you need to look at the camera, because when I look at the camera, it looks like I'm looking at you. And so that's really important for you to do. Are there other questions?
Nihal Gajar is asking, could you please elaborate on thinking fast?
Where does the title Think Fast, Talk Smart come from? So one of the things that people tell me that's a big struggle, and it used to be for me too, is when I'm put on the spot, somebody asks a question just like you did, or somebody asks me for feedback, or I make a mistake and I have to correct it. Those are all situations where you have to think fast. You have to respond quickly. And there's some very specific techniques you can use to become better at thinking fast. If you go online and you search YouTube for Think Fast, Talk Smart, you will see a talk that I gave many years ago that walks through some of the steps. Listening to the podcast will help as well. So there are things you can do to help in your mindset and your approach to be able to think more quickly. And then the second part, of course, is to talk smart, right? So think fast, talk smart. And that's where structure, being clear and concise play out. So think fast, talk smart is a better approach. Thank you.
Fantastic. There is another question. Guys, please either write your questions here in the chat while Matt is here, or raise your hand and I'll let you speak to ask verbally your question. There was another question from Steve Kabuli. Is it better to read a script or add a leap?
Well, so I definitely have a strong opinion on this. And in my line of work, I never say always or never. Very rarely will I say always or never. But this comes pretty close. I think it's important to be spontaneous. Now, that doesn't mean you're not practiced, you haven't thought it through, you haven't created an outline. You do all that. But in the moment, reading a script distances you from your audience. In the academic world, there's something that we pay attention to. It's called immediacy. Immediacy is that connection you feel with an audience or with a person, and reading gets in the way of immediacy. So I am not a supporter of reading a script. Now, that said, there are some times where you have to say it exactly right. For legal reasons or other reasons, if you deviate at all, you can get in trouble or other people can get in trouble. So there are times where a script is appropriate, but the vast majority of the time, I would much rather you speak from an outline or from a structure that can help.
Nihal Gajar has raised a hand, so please speak. Please ask your question.
Yeah, hi, and thank you, Matt. I really appreciate all the great content. The question I have is, for women, sometimes and if you're in a deep tech or technology space, when you're talking, you're going to be judged, and you're going to be judged very differently, or you have to be 10x better. So what I wanted to find out is really identify what kind of visualization perhaps, or something I can do. Because if it is one-on-one, I'm not afraid. But if it's many of those engineers, directors, etc., in the audience, and I know I'm going to be judged, I just know I'm not comfortable. Any tips there?
Yes. So first, let me comment on what you said initially. That is about being judged. Everyone is judged and evaluated when they speak. Unfortunately, I do agree with you. I think women in others can be judged maybe more or even more harshly. But judging happens all the time. So that my answer, I think, will help everyone. And I like your idea. Visualization is really helpful. There's a lot of research in the field that studies anxiety management around speaking. In fact, one of the oldest techniques is to visualize. So you see yourself in advance of going into the room or logging into the Zoom, you see yourself being successful, and that puts you in a positive space. In fact, there are tools today on the market that give you an opportunity to help visualize through virtual reality. You can actually put the goggles on and you'll see an imaginary audience, and you can practice in front of that audience. This desensitizes you and helps you visualize success. So know that there are tools like that. One of my favorites is called virtual speech. Virtual speech. It's a great tool. You get goggles, you can see really cool stuff. Now, another way to accomplish the same goal is to change the focus. Instead of seeing the spotlight on yourself, turn the spotlight on your audience by reminding yourself that you are in service of your audience. Your job as a communicator, regardless of who's in the room, their power, their status, their gender, whatever, your job is to help people. And you have information that is helpful. And when you remind yourself that the goal here is to help people and not that you're being judged, just by playing that mind game of turning the focus from you to them can really help. So I hope in that there was some advice or guidance that could help you in those situations and hopefully help everybody.
No, I did.
Let's take one or two more questions, please.
Yes, from Diana. Diana, please go.
Hi, Diana.
I just lowered my own hand. My biggest challenge when I'm speaking in front of an audience is I will forget words. And I will sit there and I'll be like a deer in the headlights. Like, yes. Oh my God, what was I just saying? And what's the word? And it can be any word. But it's embarrassing. And then I get embarrassed and then and
it makes it worse, right? You get even more nervous. Deanna, that is not uncommon. Many people, in fact, the most common fear people report is blanking out. And it sounds like, unfortunately, in some circumstances that happens for you. Let me give you 2 tips on how to manage that situation. One is to do like you do if you lose your phone or lose your keys. We retrace our steps. We go back, right, to try to find them. If you lose your place or you lose a word, I would just repeat yourself. Most of us who can't remember what we want to say next can remember what we just said. So by repeating yourself, it often will get you back on track. So say it again. Say it again differently. Tell a story that's similar to what you just said. Do you see what I just did there? 5 times I said the same thing. And it doesn't sound that bad. When I give this advice, people are like, but aren't people going to think I'm silly for saying the same thing over and over again? We do it all the time. We repeat ourselves. In fact, it can help. So first thing, if you blank out on a word or some words or what you want to say, just repeat what you said. It will often get you back on track. Second, if that doesn't help, distract your audience. Give your audience something else to do while you collect your thoughts. Now, I'm a teacher. And as a professor, I know I can do this more easily than others, but you can do the same thing. Sometimes I'll blank out. Sometimes I'll forget what I'm saying. And what I'll do is I'll stop. I'll repeat myself. If that doesn't help, then what I'll do is I'll pause and I'll say, I want to pause for a moment. And I'd like for each of you to think about how what we've just said can be put into action. Now, when my students hear me say that, they don't think, oh, Matt's forgotten. They think, wow, he really wants me to apply this. So is there a question that you can have at the ready that makes sense for your talk that you could ask? And I think a general question like, how can we apply this? Or what does this mean for our normal work? Or what could you take from what I've said and expand on it? And while you ask your audience to think about it, in that time, their attention is not focused on you. You can take a breath and you can often find those words that you were struggling with. So you're not alone, Deanna. I encourage you to go forward, repeat yourself, and then try one of those questions to distract your audience long enough to get back on track. Let's take one more question. I unfortunately do have a deadline today, but let's take one more question.
We have Tatiana Karpov from Ukraine. She's asking how to stay calm when sharing something personal and getting emotional.
Yes.
Want to be authentic and even vulnerable, how to balance between competence and vulnerability.
What a powerful question. And coming from somebody who is currently in Ukraine, you're the expert on how to stay calm under pressure, more than I could ever be. But this desire to be authentic, warm, and open is a very important one. Part of it is confidence. You have to be comfortable showing that side of yourself. And some of us are more comfortable than others. And society helps some of us be more comfortable than others. So we have to recognize that as well. What I recommend is if you are not somebody who feels as comfortable as you would like being open and warm, is one, try to put yourself in situations where you have some psychological safety. So be in a team where they're supportive. Ask people to share just like you're hoping to share. So part of it's about the environment you find yourself in. Second, take baby steps. It doesn't have to be all of a sudden you come out with important, very personal, deep information. Maybe you disclose something that's a little personal and see how that feels and see how people respond. And then you give a bit more. And then finally, I think one of the best ways, once you're comfortable and confident sharing, to be warm and to be seen as warm and connective, is to tell stories and to ask questions. I think those are the two best ways. So rather than saying, I'm somebody who's really passionate, tell a story about something that makes you passionate. Showing better than telling. And then asking others questions is a great way to demonstrate empathy, warmth, and connection. So I love the goal that you're striving for. I hope you and those around you are safe where you are. And I thank all of you for the questions. You can be in touch with me. I just put in the chat my LinkedIn. Feel free to link in with me personally or connect to Think Fast, Talk Smart on LinkedIn. I am a religious user of those, and I try to respond to questions that people have there. It was a true pleasure to be with you. The work that all of you are doing is so important. Please keep it up. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was Matt Abrahams from Stanford Graduate School of Business. And we spoke on the best tactics and ways of communicating, all the techniques and all the materials that you want to know more from Matt will be shared with you via email and added to our YouTube channel. So who watched this stream on YouTube, please press the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it across your network. Matt, I wish you all the best. Looking forward to connect you later. And please keep what you're doing. This is amazing. I'm your true fan since 2014 or 2015 when I first time seen your video. And yeah, Go Global World is a full supporter of Matt Abrahams. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it very much.
And thank you, everyone, for connecting. Please support us on social media and have a great the rest of your day and wherever you are in the world. Take care, guys.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Daniel.
Have a good day.